I think next week I'm going to play for you something that was said by one of our MPs in Parliament. I'm not going to start, I'm just going to play it. I ain't going to say it no more. I want you to hear what was said about secularizing the Bahamas in our Parliament. That means get rid of God. That's why they are fussing with the preamble. The preamble is a problem, because the preamble states that we will respect Christian values. Christian refers to spirituality, which is a problem to the secular mind. The secular is saying, I don't want nothing to prick my conscience. Leave my conscience alone. Let me decide what is acceptable or unacceptable, what is right or what is wrong. Let me decide that. Forget this thing you all call God. I am the end in myself. A secularization. Another term they use, write it down, is, this one is dangerous, the enlightened society. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one recently. You know, they say, well, you are not enlightened. I heard someone use it on a radio talk show one day, you know, one homosexual called it, and says, you know, some of these pastors are not enlightened, they said. They're not enlightened. What they're saying is, your thinking is old-fashioned. This is a dangerous statement. The enlightened society means that we are liberal to the point where we have no boundaries. The enlightened society says we are the law. The enlightened society says we can change them when we want. That's the laws. Enlightened society is we are so sophisticated now that we are capable of accepting anything that we can justify personally, even though it may not be naturally acceptable. If we can accept it ourselves, then it is acceptable. No boundaries. That's the society that we are converging with. That is the mentality that we are working with. And I beg you as an individual to wake up, please, and think about this, because when you go to your job this week, there are people working next to you who think like that. They say things like, you still believe in that old stupid book, the Bible? That's written by men. That's old, that's archaic, that's out of date, that's not an enlightened book. That book is so old-fashioned. It doesn't keep up with the times, and they make you start doubting your own convictions. It's called the enlightened society. Every civilization that claimed it was enlightened self-destruct. Check history. Who do you think you are? You think you're smarter than the Romans, the Egyptians, the Greeks? They are all buried under dust today. You cannot outthink God. Listen, you will never convince me that you are smarter than God. Never. And the laws he laid down, you can't invent laws better than them. You can't even invent them. It's impossible to be enlightened beyond the light.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And God doesn't give light, you know. He is light. That means if you ain't got him, whatever you call light is actually darkness. And Paul says they call darkness light. And by the way, don't miss this next two sessions, because you're going to understand that light and darkness is what the fight is about. Number 5 is the big one. The age of reason. They call it the age of reason because what they're saying is we can reason out everything. You don't need faith anymore. You can sit down and figure everything out, even if you got to invent the solution. Age of reasoning means that there's no need for belief in an unseen God. The age of reason means that there's no place for you to believe in something you cannot see. The age of reason means that if you can't touch it and feel it and smell it, it's not real. The age of reason, and the age of reason is as old as Pharaoh, but we think it's new. You know, they had some guys called the agnostics. And these guys got into all this deep stuff. You know, the Greeks are actually known as the age of reason. They're the ones who sat down and tried to reason out everything. I was listening to a debate yesterday on the Broadcasting Corporation of Britain. And they had a debate over immigration. It's a very important debate they had. And they were trying to deal with what do you do with people who are moving from country to country and they bring their culture with them? And they had two groups debating this. And what was interesting is that it was held in Greece, in Athens, where democracy was born. And Greece is now a basket case. That means they broke. And most of their intelligent people are leaving their country because they can't find jobs. So there's a brain drain taking place in Greece now, and those people are moving into Europe because they are part of the European community. And what the other countries are saying is, don't come into our country. So now they got what they call fascism emerging, which is what Hitler was, and they're claiming nationalism, which is saying, we don't want you all in our country because you're going to make us poor. So you got this tension going on in Europe right now, and believe me, it's going to happen in the Caribbean too. Matter of fact, we got some issues that we ain't admitting concerning the stress in our community right now, because we got groups that have been here for a long time and some coming and they are beginning to feel tension. And I was sitting there listening to this program, watching and listening to the speakers, and some of them were members of parliament, some of them were, you know, heads of great organizations, and they all ended the debate with no solution. And I sat there and I said, they're trying to reason out in the center of reasoning, Athens, problems that they cannot solve. How can we put our trust in the people who invented democracy and it didn't work for them? Maybe we need to question democracy. But think about democracy. Democracy as a reasoning component, if you think about it, it cannot work without God. Because democracy makes man God. Man decides what is acceptable by vote. Don't you ever believe, and I say this publicly, that the voice of the people is the voice of God. That is not scripturally sound. As a matter of fact, in many cases, God went with the minority. Joshua said to all the people, I place before you today life and death. He said, now I advise you to choose life, he said, but I can't make you choose it. He said, but as for me and my house, that was a private decision he had to make. As for me and my house, he says, we, I don't know about you all neighbors, we will serve the Lord. You will have to come to that point very soon. Because the converging tides are pushing on you. You are 48 years old, you ain't married. And a girl winks at you. And you are a girl. Oh yeah. I mean, what do you do with that convergence? It's vice versa too for men. What do you do? Can I say to you, friends, that we are in a period of life where you're going to have to find out where's the rock in all of this convergence. I got to find me a rock. I got to find something to put my anchor on, because this current is going to destroy me. It's going to suck me in if I don't have a rock. Jesus never called himself an anchor. He said, I am the rock. And upon this rock, that if I am the Christ, I'm going to build my people. My prayer is that we will leave this place thinking. I look at the Philippines. I cry for the Philippines. To see liberalism moving in there. I weep over America, losing all the foundation rocks. Canada just about lost them all. And ain't none seem to be in England anymore. No more rock. You know what I discovered? They're coming to your country and moving your rocks. They're telling you, go with the tide. And when you tell them you got rock, they say, you are not moving with the times. And they tell you, you can't exist with us unless you get rid of your rock. I know the pressure. But let's remember this, okay? You are never remembered for what you compromised for. You are always remembered for what you stood for. Stand for something. The last one summarizes all of it. We are in the age of the humanistic society. Humanism is old. Let no one impress you with humanism. Humanism is as old as Pharaoh. The pharaohs believed that they were sons of the gods. Which means that they humans believed that they were gods. And that's why you could not defy a pharaoh. Some of you wondering why Moses had a problem with Pharaoh. Pharaoh was confused about Moses. When Moses came to Pharaoh, now Moses grew up with Pharaoh. He grew up in the courts. The guy knew their convictions, their belief system. He knew what their reasoning was. But Moses had to be taken out of the system for 40 years. And when he ran into God in the bush, the burning bush, God sent him back to tell Pharaoh, you ain't God. Pharaoh went into shock. What do you mean I ain't God? And Moses says, look, I suggest you submit to my suggestions and let the people go, because you're about to expose your ungodlikeness. And Pharaoh, like most politicians, decide, I don't care. This is what I was taught in the University of Egypt. I got a degree in philosophical convictions that I am God. And Pharaoh refused. And there are many today who are standing firm refusing. Somehow they feel proud that they don't believe in God, as if they need a trophy. You are as old as Pharaoh, and he's dead. Humanism is when the buck stops with the human. When the human says, what is right is what I say is right. Which means that no man can judge no other man. Humanism. Humanism says, mind your own business. Humanism says, don't get in my business. Humanism says, leave me to my own convictions. You mind your own business. Don't try and convince me about anything. Humanism says, we are the end of ourselves. Let me tell you something. If you are God, I sure don't want to be worshiping you. You can't even get married. You can't even stay married. You can't even pay your bills. You ain't sure of your sexuality. How can you be God when you are confused about what you can see? Listen, these are just questions I'm asking. You got to deal with this when you go outside this door. Humanism. Jesus said there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end of that way is death. Jesus said, John, I am the vine, you just the branches. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you can ask anything you want in life, it shall be done. For without me, he says, you can do nothing. And then he says, Only the fool have said in his heart, there's no God. You don't need to call people who are atheist fools. God did it himself. You can remind them of what he said, but they shouldn't take offense. You're just repeating what someone else concluded about them. I can quote God, thou art a fool. That's simple. Don't get upset at me. But you see, the issue is this. Humanism is so dangerous because that's exactly what Lucifer fell over. Lucifer fell over self-worship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The whole of his corruption was when he thought that he could be God. Who are we? I am so afraid to trust myself. I'm so glad I can trust in God.